Kimberly and Ed. Happy Thursday. So it looks like, hey Ed. Hi Diana. It looks like Facebook is not allowing Zoom to stream in our groups anymore. So I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. I don't know what's going on. So we are not live in the group. We are just live in Zoom. So welcome. Today is part number 5, which is, oh my gosh, you have an offer. Now what do you do? So we're going to talk about explaining the offer, the short sale offer and the equity offer to your sellers, and then just some steps that you'll take. If you have an equity offer, what would you do next? And then short sale offer, what you would do next. Before we get started, are there any questions? Maybe from last week or just in general? Okay. Feel free to post them in the chat if you have questions. Otherwise, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so you get an offer. Let's talk about, so distressed sales. I use that a lot. Back when I started, it was 100% a short sale, okay? But now it's a little bit different. So we go about it differently. So you really have to determine before you take on this listing if it's a equity or a short, okay? So when you get an offer, you want to explain the short sale a little bit different and the equity sale. So let's start with the short sale. So when you get a short sale offer, a lot of times it's probably going to be at the list price, maybe more, maybe a little bit before. Diana, all the past trainings have been recorded. If you go inside of our group, which, Diana, I don't know if you have 1,000 different Facebooks, but just about every single day you're joining the same group again. So I'm a little bit confused by that. But you can go to the guides section of our group and see all of the past trainings. So let me just show you that real quick. So if here is our group, if you click guides, you'll be able to see all of the past trainings. Now, last week's part 4 is here. Part 5 today, it will be released tomorrow, but it does not get put into this until about a week later, okay? Okay, so explaining the short sale offer. You get an offer, and then how do you explain it to your sellers? Well, look, your sellers are on the title of the property, so they have to cooperate. They have to sign all the paperwork. So the way that I explain it is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we got an offer. Maybe it's listed at $300 and you get an offer for $290. Okay, let's just say. Back in the day, we were getting offers for like half of what it was listed, just a different market. So you get an offer at $290. It is a short sale. You already know that. So how do you go about explaining that? Well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we got an offer for $290. Okay. We're encouraging you to sign up this offer. And here's why. Well, it's pretty close to that list price, but ultimately in the end, it is going to be up to your bank. So while your sellers still have to sign because they're on the title and cooperate, it is always going to be up to the bank in the end whether they say yes. You have to have a short sale offer in order to start that process with the bank. Now, that does vary slightly depending on the bank or the end investor. But this offer, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, will allow us to start the short sale process. Our hope is to close with this buyer, okay? but at least it will allow us to start that process. If we can make it work with that buyer in the end, great. If we can't, by that point, you will know what the bank wants and you can put it back on the market as an approved short sale. So does that make sense as far as, so when you go in and you explain the short sale offer to your seller, really you could sell it for $1 and they're not gonna be responsible for any of the difference. Now, that also varies depending if they have done a bankruptcy. We're not gonna get into all of that in this session, and they also may get a 1099, which we're also not gonna get into. But they always say, why are you explaining this to me? It doesn't matter to me. No, it doesn't. But we, as a community, like to ensure that these homeowners know what is going on. So we explain to them, hey, you got the offer for $290. It's still a short. You have to sign off on it because you're still on the title. You have to be involved in the process. But in the end, your bank could say yes to the $290, or they could counter that $290. And that's where the buyer's agent and the buyers must understand that. Even if you got an offer at $300 and it's listed at $300, the bank could still come back and say, no, I want $320. Okay. That's why I think last week when I said, hey, you really have to make sure you understand these or be a part of a community that understands these, because there is definitely a strategic way to go in and price a short sale in this market, depending on the condition, depending on the bank, depending on the end investor. Okay. So that's how I explain the offer to them. And then I ensure that the sellers, most banks will allow electronic signatures. Okay. So we ask that the sellers electronically sign the offer within, a day of getting it. Probably quicker depending on where they're at in the foreclosure process. So does that make sense for short sale offer? Any questions on that? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
So once they accept it, then is it pretty much like in some regard a normal transaction at that point, as far as can the buyer say, I want it to close in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Is there any flexibility in that?
No. In the end, the bank is also going to pick the date. So I instruct all buyers agents to not put a actual date on the contract. Okay. It should state 45 days upon approval, because you have absolutely no clue when it's going to close. When you get a short sale offer, it is not going to close in 30 to 45 days, period. Not happening. Because that is when the process starts with the bank. And so we're going to go over the next steps here in a minute, Kimberly. But you then have to prepare a packet. You got to send it into the bank. It's probably going to be 2 to 4 months before you actually get it approved. Once it's approved, then the closing is usually 30 to 45 days out, depending if it's financing or cash. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's explaining the short sale offer. Let's go in and just briefly talk about the next steps once you have the short sale. Okay, your seller has signed. Awesome. Okay. But what are you going to do after that? Well, you're going to collect all of the documentation that is needed. Now, I could sit here all day and talk about all the documents that every single bank asks for. It is going to be different depending on the lender. We have access to all of that inside of our community group. Okay. But in general, it's usually pay stubs, bank statements, tax returns, 4506T, hardship letter, and then the bank packet. So like I said, every single bank has a different packet. So in my 17 plus years of handling this, I have collected all of those, and then they do get updated from time to time. So you have to collect all of the documents that the bank is requesting, and don't just put it into a packet. You have to review all of the paperwork. Okay. You got to make sure it makes sense. Their hardship makes sense. Do you have any additional questions? As a short sales specialist, it is your job to thoroughly review the packet prior to submitting it to the bank. So we'll talk about that in another part of this training. But after you have them sign the offer, you're going to collect all of the documentation. Give them a deadline of when this documentation has to be returned, okay? You're also going to have pull title. So some of you may be an attorney state, some of you may be a title company state. If your title company, have that relationship with the title company, go straight to them. If it's an attorney, regardless if it's attorney or title company, we do have a template that we use to request that title, okay? Now, you may have pulled title before you started the deal, depending on if it looked wacky or not. But why is pulling title so crucial? Ultimately, you have no idea what's going on with it, okay? You may look online and see that it has equity. The sellers may think it has equity. Oh, but this is popping up on title. You have to give clear title to the buyers. And so I love reviewing title commitments. I did a whole training inside of the community on that. Please review the title. Ensure that there's one mortgage that the sellers have told you about. Maybe there's a partial claim from an FHA. Maybe there's an IRS tax lien. You really want to know what is going on with title because you are going to have to clear all of that. Okay. So pull the title, review the title. After you get title back, then either the title company or your attorney will prepare a preliminary statement. If you are a title company state, make sure that the title company you're using understands short sales. It is a requirement that you prepare a preliminary statement and send it in with the short sale offer packet. There's no way around that. If your title company is saying they can't do that, they don't do short sales. Move on to the next one, okay? So you have to prepare the preliminary statement. Now, we're also not going to go into the exact all of that in this session, but there's a way to prepare that. The bottom line has to be zero in a short sale, okay? Your sellers aren't making any money. They're not bringing any money. So there's a whole, like, I like to review everyone inside of my community that are submitting packets. I want to review that statement because once you submit it and it goes through, you want to make sure there's no mistakes, okay? Throughout the process, though, you'll probably have to update that. But so crucial. Review the title, excuse me, and then have the preliminary statement, HUD, master statement, whatever you call it, prepared because that will have to be submitted with the packet. Okay. Questions on title or the preliminary statement? Otherwise, the final, so go ahead and post or you can unmute yourself. But the final bullet point here is, make sure make sure your sellers understand what the next steps are. Okay. So it is our passion. I have dedicated my whole career to helping these homeowners truly move on to the next chapter. Take this weight off of their shoulders. So, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we have a short sale offer. Don't worry though, we're not going to have to close in 30 to 45 days. However, now's the time to really think about where you're going for your next chapter. Are you moving in with a family? Are you moving out of state? Do you need help finding a rental? Okay. They have time because you still have to go through that short sale process. It's when you get the approval letter that it's like, okay, now's the time, like you got to get out. So you really want to make sure they understand the next steps, okay? All right, questions on those 4 points: collecting the paperwork, title, preliminary statement, making sure your homeowner understands the next steps. This is just short sale. Then we'll move on to the equity. Questions there?
I have a question. So
Okay.
I'm wondering why would you pull title first before you even had it listed? Wouldn't that be one of the first things that you do?
So no, we typically do not. Now, when I do speak to the homeowner, I do a search on the county tax site. I do a search on the recorder of deeds. If something looks wacky or out of place, then yes, I will ask for title to be pulled. So we do a lot of due diligence up front. Remember, you don't want to take on these deals if you don't think you can help the homeowner. Like, for example, I got a call Tuesday from our letters that we use, and someone was murdered in the house. And so we're trying to figure out all the craziness behind that. Okay, lots of moving parts. I don't always pull title up front unless there's something wacky because we want to ensure that we can get it done. Typically, it is done when the offer is received. And then my team has a template. They send it over to, we're an attorney state, they send it over to the attorneys. And then once title comes back, I review it. But we don't normally pull it up front unless something looks odd, Kimberly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Cecilia, Steve, hello. Lamati, hello. Okay, let's move on to an equity offer. So I think if you've been around me long enough, you know that we use the word distress sales, and that could mean short sale, and that could mean equity sale. So equity sale for us is, okay, the homeowner is in the foreclosure process. They may have an auction date, maybe they don't, but they have enough equity to sell as an equity sale. We don't use the word traditional because there's still a lot of moving parts when it is an equity sale. So just to give you an example, I have a closing on Monday. It is an equity sale this upcoming Monday. She came off of one of our letters that we use. Her auction is scheduled for May 21st, okay? But we pulled title, nothing was on it, clean. She's making about $85,000 off of this sale. Now that never happened back in the day. It's still happening a little bit now. So, if this is a niche that you're looking to get into, you could really make a difference and a profound impact with those deals, okay? But we want to help everyone. So, how do you explain an equity offer? Well, if you have multiple offers, then you're going to go in and explain all those. Now, this particular deal, I did get over asking, but that's not always going to be the case. I have another one closing on Monday that came from an attorney, and it's an equity sale, but we did not get the list price. Okay. So again, every situation is going to be different. In an equity sale, you're going to go to Mr. and Mrs. Seller and say, hey, we have this offer. Okay. I also highly recommend that you still do an as-is sale. Okay. But they do have the right to counter and stuff because there is equity involved. Now, just to step back on the short sale, I never counter the offer on a short sale. Why? Because ultimately in the end, it is up to the bank. We just wait for the bank to contact me if there's a counter offer. Okay. So in an equity, we could counter. Now I haven't had that in a while. Usually we pick the highest and best offer. Okay. So that's explaining an equity offer is going to be a lot easier than a short sale offer. So usually the sellers in an equity situation always says, well, hey, what am I going to make? What am I going to make? It's so important to them. We want to get to them before that auction. It goes to auction, they are going to lose out on all of that. Okay. So they accept the offer. Great. Now what happens? Now this is what we do inside of our community when it comes to an equity offer. We order an updated payoff. So even though it's an equity, I still have my seller sign an authorization. Why? Because my team wants to be in full control of the process. We handle everything. The sellers like it, the attorneys like it, everyone in the process likes it, okay? And so my team, so my transaction coordinator is instructed to order an updated payoff. Updated because you probably already ordered one at the beginning to determine if it was an equity or short, right? So she orders an updated payoff through the close date. And then this is really important. We want to talk about the timeline with the seller. Sellers have to be out of the property. Okay. I know it's an equity sale. Could she do a rent back? It's a very tricky gray area. all my sellers, especially in a short sale, they have to be out. No rent packs, they got to be out. Okay. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if we're closing, if she had an auction, so she had an auction date May 21st, we wanted to make sure that we were closing at least a week before that auction, okay? Because there's definitely some things that the title company attorneys are going to have to do because they're so close to that date. We're actually closing on Monday, so that gives us plenty of time, right? It'll close Monday. But your seller, so my seller is moving out and will be out this weekend. So you got to ensure that your seller still understands what's going on. They're probably going to be pretty motivated to get out because they're making money off of the sale, right? Like a short sale, you're going to order title. Make sure everything is clean. Now, in this particular deal, we got title back, and there was actually this second mortgage. She got some help with her loan a long time ago, but she had a release for it. So that could be the case. She had an original release, and so she provided it to my attorney, and that will be recorded at closing. So essentially, there's only one mortgage, okay? But you do want to make sure you're doing all of that due diligence up front. So we do pull the title, and I will have my attorney prepare a preliminary statement with the breakdown of everything. The bottom line for that one is going to be the equity that they're pulling out, okay? So I do like to explain all of the numbers to them because here in the state of Illinois, we pay taxes in arrears, so the tax credit is always super, super high. But I do like to explain to my seller the preliminary statement in an equity sale. So that way they understand the bottom line and what they are receiving. So are equity sales a lot easier? Yes, they are. Mainly because it is a shorter time frame. We got to get it closed like yesterday because there's usually an upcoming auction, okay? Just because you have it listed as an equity sale or a short sale does not mean the bank is going to stop the foreclosure process. That is very important. They still proceed. Why? Because then everyone under the sun will call you and ask you to list their house to delay. Then nothing ever gets done. Okay. So that's really, really important to understand. All right. So there's some questions. Once a short sale offer, once the short sale accepted the offer, will they ever counter back again to the buyers? Yes, they absolutely can. In a short sale situation, listed at 300, get an offer at 300. Bank comes back and says, nope, I want 330. Does it happen? Yes. Has it happened to me? Yes. Does it happen that often to me? No, it does not. Because you have to really understand how their bank and end investor will go about the short sale. Okay. And that's where having a community is so crucial for your success in this niche. So for example, FHA, they have to net a certain percent. So if your taxes are higher, you're not going to be able to price the short sale as aggressive. I know how PHH works versus Chase versus SLS versus SPS. That is so important. I may not understand your market area as far as prices, but my community understands how to price a short sale depending on who the servicer is and the end investor. Little bit more wiggle room when it comes to like a Fannie Mae deal. So Diana, to answer your question, yes, that could happen, but my guess is the agent and did not know how to properly price a short sale, and that is why that is happening. So good question. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have for today. So I would love to open it up for any questions. Maybe you have questions about part 5, any other questions from the other parts, and then let's see what we have for next week. So
Okay, I have a question. So Heather, you said to order for the equity sale, order the payoff. Is that different than title?
yeah, the payoff is what you're going to ask from their servicer or their bank. I use servicer and bank the same. Okay. So you want to know what the bottom line is that you have to pay off to their bank. It's always more than what they think because they had a deferment. They've had, their property taxes. There's going to be a negative balance in there. They're not making their mortgage payment, but the bank's still paying the property taxes. That's why the escrow is negative. So you have to order a payoff. The payoff is from their bank. The preliminary statement is from the title company. So how do you explain that situation to the buyers? Well, it is definitely tricky. So in the beginning, when an offer comes in, and there is a training inside of the group on this. Let me see if I can find it. It's 4 questions that you should be asking a buyer's agent up front. Oh, this is our community. Hold on. So I do ask certain questions. So some of those questions are, is your buyer willing to wait? Because this is a short sale. It could take 2 months. It could take a year. We have no clue. Are they willing to wait? Yes or no? Are they willing to negotiate if the bank makes a counter offer? Because just because your offer is at the list price or even above, it is a possibility that the bank makes a counter. Now, if you're doing the short sale the right way, that really should not happen. Okay. So those are the 2 big ones to answer your question, Diana. But hold on. 4 things. It is in here somewhere. 4 questions to ask a buyer's agent before your seller signs a short sale offer. That was last August. So you can go back and watch that one. But you have to go in and just talk to the buyer's agent. Hey, unfortunately, the bank appraisal came back higher and the bank wants 330. Now that buyer may be able to negotiate a little bit depending on if it's FHA or Fannie Mae or whoever. Very important to know that up front. So maybe instead of 30,000 more, they could get it at 15 or 20. If you can't make it work with that buyer, then, okay, you can't officially cancel it out. And then you put it back on the market as an approved short sale at that price. Okay. So does it suck that you have to essentially kind of start over? You're not fully starting over, but just remember, you're the listing specialist here. You're not losing out on the deal. You're just losing out on that buyer. Okay. Other questions? You can negotiate again with the right lender. So some banks will negotiate. So if they come back and they say, hey, we want 330, it depends on who the bank is and the end investor. Sometimes you can negotiate, sometimes you cannot. Any other questions? Okay, so next week is part 6. We're nearing the end of this series, which is crazy. So we will do part 6 and so let's see here, part 6, 7, and 8. And then we are going to take a week off on the 23rd. We will not be in session because that is my kid's last day of school. Woo-hoo! So next week, we're going to talk more specifically about the short sale process. Okay. So next week we'll just touch on the short sale process. We won't talk much about the equity, but of course, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. But we'll talk specifically about the short sale process next week. And then we'll move into the final 2 weeks will be really like about the approval letter and some really crucial things that you need to do prior to closing. Any other questions? Okay, so I will hang out for a couple of minutes if there's any additional questions. Otherwise, thanks for joining us for part 5. I'll release the recording sometime tomorrow. And hopefully you guys are all getting notifications when stuff goes live in the group as far as posts and stuff. If you're not, let me know. If you're not getting the emails, let me know. We have some really fun, exciting things coming up that we're working on for summer. So I want to make sure everyone is in there and is able to communicate. Okay. So yeah, we have May. So we're May 2nd is part 6. May 9th is part 7. May 16th is part 8. This is an 8-part series. And then we will not be in session on May 23rd. That is my boys' last day of school, but we will be back on May 30th. So just that week. And I will send reminders and stuff in the group. But we have 3 more weeks of this session. I'm sorry, this series, and then we'll move on to something else after that. All right. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.